Hello, Bob Van Rossum with Market Pro. So we've got a new search. It's a really cool search. We've got a CMO executive search, and great brand, great product, great market fit, really cool culture as an organization based in Europe and doing about 10 billion, almost, well, more than that, close to 12 billion a year in revenue on a global basis. This is the CMO for the US, really focused on North America. And here in the US, it's just not going well, right? I mean, historically, they haven't really focused on the US, but then about 2.5, 3 years ago, they started to. And their estimate, not my estimate, their estimate is they're about $1 billion a year behind where they should be revenue-wise in the US. So significant disconnect between goals and results at the end of the day. And so why is that, right? Why did that happen? And what can you do, or what can your organization, if you're in a similar situation, do to avoid that? So as I said, we're excited about the search. It's a great company, great brand, great product, but the search has problems. And the problems are, we're not the first person to do it. We're actually the third attempt at the search. The first two have gone very, very wrong. So what's happened? The first time they went to market with this search, they hired a search firm that was focused on their industry. And there's a couple challenges with that, which we've discussed in other videos. But the biggest challenge with that is an industry-specific executive search firm. You are limiting your pool of talent potentially significantly. All good search firms do not recruit from their clients. In any search firm that has too many customers in the same industry, in your industry, they can't pull those candidates, right? They can't reach out to and call those individuals because contractually they're obligated not to. And so what you thought was an advantage, right? This person understands my industry, they understand my space, and therefore they're going to know better how to find the right person and who the players are in our industry, which is ultimately really easy to figure out. They're going to be able to help me, but in reality, the fact that they're industry specific only hurts because there's so many places they can't recruit. So that's the first problem and the biggest problem. The second problem, but I think also very important, is if they're specific to your industry, they don't know marketing. And marketing is different than finance or operations or other areas of the organization where you could be recruiting a C-suite person, right? When you're doing a chief marketing officer executive search, how they got to become a CMO is very important. You may be needing more of someone who is e-commerce focused or digital focused or product focused or brand focused. And all of those things could be different and unique to your organization. And if the executive search firm doesn't know how to filter that out, you're ultimately going to get a slate of candidates and potentially none of them are a good fit. So they went ahead and hired somebody from this first round of search that they did with their industry specific partner. And that person lasted a little over a year. And in that year, they really didn't make any progress. They didn't make any progress on growing the brand in the US. They really didn't make any progress on actual driving sales and revenue based on what their performance targets were. And so that person, and they didn't feel like that person was a good leader or a good culture fit. So nothing aligned as it was this individual to what they were looking for. And that was after using an industry specific executive search firm. So that all finished 6-9 months ago. And then they said, well, hey, why don't we just try this on our own? And the HR team is very talented, very smart, very good at what they do, have done an amazing job of building out the sales organization in the US. And that's very different than recruiting a chief marketing officer. So they've gone out and started to recruit candidates. And based on the fact this is a European-based organization, the process has been run more as a European-based hiring process than a US-based hiring process. All that to say, instead of having 4, maybe 5 interviews for the CMO, they've had 8 to 10 interviews as they were doing it with their internal HR team. And as we're now reaching out to candidates and saying, hey, we've got this opportunity that could be a fit, they've really kind of poisoned the market on their employment brand. And the perception of the employment brand is that they're not sure what they're looking for because of the number of interviews that they're conducting. And the expectation of what they're asking of the interviewees is not typical of what you find in the US, more typical of what you find in Europe, but it's turning people off from the opportunity. So first round of interviews, first round of the search, they hired somebody who wasn't a good fit. Second round of the search, they hired nobody because they didn't think they found the right person. And throughout the process, they kind of poisoned the market on what talent's perception was of who they are as an employer. It is actually a great employer, great employment brand, great culture, and we're excited to have the opportunity. But all of that means now that in a search like this, which is an in-office opportunity, where typically for this company, this organization, this city, we would probably find half the candidates local and half the candidates are going to require relocation because that local market has been damaged by the previous search. We're more likely to have to go to a relocation candidate, which is just an increased expense for our client that if we could avoid, we would like to. Right? So what would have been obviously much cleaner, much more simple is, Market Pro, we just completed our 300th marketing executive search. And Market Pro, we've just completed our 300th CMO specific marketing executive search. We've done many more, searches that include chief product officers, chief digital officers, head of e-commerce, head of communications, head of brand. Our niche is that CMO role and the next level that reports up to it. But having completed 300 CMO executive searches, had they come to us the first time, right, we would have been able to solve finding the right candidate for them, would have been much more likely to be able to save them the relocation dollars. And 2 years ago, if that was when the search happened, they would be much farther along from a revenue perspective. Their own estimate, not our estimate, is they're $1 billion behind where they should be on an annual basis revenue in the US. And so we're going to get that squared away for them. And 2 years from now, they'll be way over that. But ultimately, it is interesting to see some of the mistakes that were made that are common. I would say 30% of the searches we do have one of these two problems, right? What's unusual is that they have both. And so, we're going to help them through that. But really, organizations, need to understand what it takes to hire the right executive search partner. We just did a separate video and a separate blog post on how to hire an executive search firm and what are the questions you need to ask. But it's so critical in building your organization, specifically as a chief marketing officer executive search firm. It is different than other areas of the organization because ultimately, as a CMO, you could be really wanting a brand person or a digital person or an e-commerce person, or you could need someone that's a mix of all of those things. And we're uniquely qualified to help you figure that out. And then most CMO search processes, right? This is the other problem they had. There wasn't a marketer in any of those processes. So they went out and hired a executive search firm specific to their industry that doesn't understand marketing, made a bad hire. Then they had their own process filled with smart people that were on the team and doing a great job, none of whom are marketers, and weren't able to find anyone. And so, what's really unique about the value we add is we understand marketing so that in our client's case, they don't have to. And most of the time, the CMO is reporting to a non-marketer, so that tends to be a very mission critical part of the process.